Here we are. So good evening, and thank you, Bonnie, for being here.
Thank you, Sam. And thanks to all of you for joining this webinar tonight. Sam reported some really wonderful registration numbers, so we are really enthused by that. I want to thank Mandy Easter with the State Law Library and Samantha Bowers, our continuing education consultant, for wrangling registration and for helping with tech issues along the way. I'm Bonnie McEwen with the Northwest District Office, and I am home based in Sioux City. So I said a little bit ago, I can't imagine there would be more people joining us than those who have registered. But if you are enjoying a watch party at your library and maybe only one person logged in, but several are there watching together, do let us know that, because we like to add those numbers to our count.
I did see, I did see one. Oh, there's a group of four. That's good, and one other group. So I will make sure to add those numbers in.
Thank you, Sam. Well, this webinar called Intersections, which is really a part and parcel of our Boardroom education series now in 2023. This series came about based on some of the most commonly asked questions that come to us at the State Library, questions surrounding buildings, budgets, and personnel. We spend a lot of time talking about library board authority. And for good reason, because we spend a lot of time talking with library boards, which is a favorite audience of mine, I can tell you. But it's also important to remember that city governments have authority too. And in these three areas of life, especially, cities have legal and rightful involvement in decision making. So not only are these topics ones that generate very frequent questions to us, these are also topics where it's really especially important for the city government and the city library to be on the same page, working together in good communication and in the spirit of cooperation. We'll start our discussion tonight with the first point of intersection, which is city buildings, city libraries. And the photo you see here on screen is Estherville Public Library. It is a beautiful building, one of hundreds of beautiful buildings, library buildings in Iowa. It's beautiful inside and out. There's beautiful landscaping there and green space. In fact, the city refers to where the library is located as Library Square. So the graphic on the left, though, takes second place to the photo of Estherville Library, but I still think it's pretty cool. I was tickled when I found this graphic showing little cars driving through the intersections.
I
Get it?
get to visit Estherville in a couple of weeks. I'm very
Oh, very
excited.
good. Yes, very good. Well, Mandy and I are confident when we say that city libraries are city buildings. This is true of 98% of our Iowa cities. I will add there is one town in Northwest Iowa where the library is currently closed and may end up being closed indefinitely. But the building that houses the library is actually privately owned, and that building is also not on city property. So that does represent an exception, but for nearly all others, we have 540 plus libraries in Iowa. City libraries are city buildings. And as this slide shows, public libraries are city departments, city buildings on city property. It's the city government that carries the library's building insurance and contents insurance. We have more to say about capital improvements coming up. But if the city also has passed any kind of policies or ordinances that prohibit smoking or drinking or carrying weapons onto city property, those policies, those ordinances also apply to the public library. So we have more on capital improvements coming up. We'll talk more about that. And for legal precedent and research on tonight's 3 topics and many, many others, I can assure you we want you to know about this resource from the State Library. Mandy is responsible for this resource. She's called it the Library Law FAQ. I don't know, Mandy, if you're online. And
we are still working on Mandy.
Okay. All right. Well, this is really an important resource that Mandy is so responsible for, because Mandy is the law librarian at the State Law Library. And she has fielded a few legal related questions in her time, and she has compiled some of the most frequently asked legal questions from libraries on a wide variety of topics. Buildings, yes. Budgets and personnel issues too, yes, but also programming questions in meeting rooms and lots of topics that have legal implications. So we wanted to make you aware of this resource. If you haven't yet explored it, browse this FAQ collections as questions come up. It will really help to inform your decision making and provide you with some really well-researched answers. And you will always find us connecting standards to the topics that we offer in our webinars and workshops. This topic of library buildings is no exception. Here you can see the document called In Service to Iowa, Public Library Standards. And you might be surprised to know that the entire Chapter 8 is devoted to library facilities. So I wanted to point this out to you to show you that connection between the topics we offer. There usually always is a connection to standards. And in Chapter 8, you can see that regarding the library facility, there are standards that call for the library to have a book drop, for the library to keep track of visitors, and to ensure that there are some handicap parking stalls. This standard, though, especially, I think is especially an important one, because this requires library boards to examine the library building inside and out in terms of compliance with ADA handicap accessibility. Now, this standard doesn't require that our libraries be fully handicapped accessible, but at a Tier 1 level, if you are meeting standards, at a Tier 1 level, it does require boards and directors to work together to fill out an ADA checklist. So it's a great opportunity to look at some of these building issues that we'll talk about, other building issues that you've encountered that maybe are not on our agenda tonight, but that you've encountered. And what you find out about your library building and grounds, if you find things that are not in compliance with the ADA, that's a perfect opportunity for the library board to make the council aware of those findings. So we see this checklist as opening up good conversations between the library and the city council. So I'll leave it there for you to explore more at your leisure about the standards that specifically relate to our library buildings. And we'll take a look at our first point of intersection tonight, which is general library upkeep and maintenance. You know, there are building issues, and then there are building issues. The ones you see here on screen are some of the easier ones to tackle, because these should be seen as pretty routine upkeep and maintenance kinds of things. And very often, there's an actual line item in your library's budget specifically for janitorial work, custodial supplies, maybe bathroom supplies, to take care of these things that you see on the screen: lawn care, shoveling, landscaping. Maybe some of those routines are done by city workers. Maybe they're not. Maybe your city is small enough that there aren't enough city workers to go around to take care of all of these things. And so then library boards can contract out or outsource some of this. You might have someone on staff who takes care of janitorial work. So when this is true, when your library's budget has a line item dedicated to routine maintenance and upkeep, and when that line item has money in it to spend, then you know that the library and the city understand that the library is budgeting for these pretty normal maintenance needs. Where this gets more challenging is in the area of capital improvements. So this is kind of a subset of the first one. Another point of intersection is capital improvements. Many Iowa cities actually have developed capital improvement plans. Does your city have one? That's a great question to ask at City Hall. If your city has a capital improvement plan, we would love to know that, and you would love to know that the library is included in an overall city capital improvement plan. Unlike normal routine weekly, monthly maintenance, capital improvements are extensive. These are expensive projects, and they can involve new roofs, new windows, maybe new HVAC systems. Capital improvement plans are typically developed for 3 to 5 years out, and ideally, we look for a lifespan of at least 1 year on whatever project is being improved upon. And quite often, the project costs, when we're talking capital improvements, the project costs can be upwards of $20,000. You know, I've been asked this more than once in my lifetime, and I know this is true of my colleagues in the other districts, and I know this is true for Mandy as well. The question has come to us a time or two that reads something like this, some variation on a theme. The city is saying that the library has to pay for a new HVAC system. How are we supposed to do that? How indeed are libraries supposed to do that? That's where building issues become challenging because paying for this revolves around answering these questions. Does the city have money set aside for capital improvements? Where is that money parked, so to speak? Is that money in the city's general fund? Is that money in a citywide capital improvement fund? Has that money been channeled to each of the city's departments? That's more unusual. Those first two things are much more typical, that capital improvement monies are either found in the city's general fund or in a citywide cap improvement fund. But these questions truly can only be answered locally by your city government. So it really requires good communication and a willingness to ask these questions and to learn how this works at your city. If Mandy's on the line, she has more to say about this.
Hi, I just like to come in when, my part starts. So sorry about the technical difficulties. So as the previous slide showed, capital improvements include roof replacements, new HVAC systems, and renovations such as installing elevators or exterior ramps. Building and renovation projects are complex and time-consuming. Because library boards and staff typically don't have the necessary expertise to deal with all aspects of a building project, outside consultants should be used to provide specialized guidance. They can advise on recommended square footage, help prevent mistakes, introduce new ideas, and sometimes diffuse controversy. Consider a library building consultant, an automation consultant, an attorney, an architect, a certified public accountant, and a state library consultant. Because city libraries are city buildings, new construction and major renovations must be included in the city's capital improvement plan. Libraries being built or remodeled are also subject to the building accessibility requirements of the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. Furthermore, taxpayers have come to expect long-term savings on government building construction that include energy-efficient features such as innovative heating and cooling solutions, modern lighting schemes, tankless water heaters, and Energy Star-rated office equipment. As trustees face the challenge of planning library services for the future, increased space and additional locations may be considered. Boards must decide whether to build a new facility, renovate or expand current facilities, or find an existing space to be converted into a library. Trustees have to study community needs, explore alternatives, identify potential funding sources, estimate timelines, and establish priorities. Sometimes purchasing a bookmobile or other outreach technique becomes part of the plan. Budgeting is critical for success. Most library budgets do not include a specific line item for capital improvements. Money for capital improvements typically comes out of the city's general fund. In conversations with your city officials, ask how the city is budgeting for eventual capital projects at the library. If neither the city's budget nor the library's budget plans for capital projects, a sudden need will present a crisis. If the city were to insist, for instance, that the cost of a new roof for the library comes out of the library's appropriation for staff, materials, equipment, and supplies, council members are well aware, or should be, that library services to their own constituents will be compromised, since such a demand is equivalent to a budget cut for the library. Officials with both the League of Cities and the State Auditor's Office emphasize that good communication between library boards and city councils prevents conflicts over responsibilities for covering the cost of building and property maintenance and improvements. Did you know that the state library allocates federal funds to public libraries as space utilization grants? Libraries can apply for up to $3,000 to pay for consulting services on how to better utilize existing space. These grants reimburse fees for professional advice from impartial consultants who provide guidance and recommendations to library directors, city officials, and communities about the use of existing space. Grant applications can request money for space needs assessments, building program reviews, or ADA compliance evaluations and planning. Applications open in the fall. So our third intersection is weather crisis or infrastructure failure. The state library always strongly encourages directors and boards to work with their city administrations to make joint decisions about closing libraries during crises, reopening them after crises, and providing crisis services such as curbside delivery. Of course, any orders along these lines from the federal or state governments must be followed by cities. While it's true that library boards are given broad authority over their library's operations, the Iowa League of Cities advises us that at the end of the day, libraries are city agencies in city-owned buildings staffed by city employees, and cities are legally liable for the decisions their mayor-appointed, city council-approved governing boards make, which puts trustees squarely under the legal auspices of their municipal governments. It is established that a city has the power to close a library over its library board's objections, but there is no legal precedent for whether a board of trustees can close a library over the objections of its city. That just hasn't been adjudicated yet. Regarding building infrastructure calamities, we're often asked if a public library must have a restroom, and if so, should the library close if the restroom is out of order? If your city has a policy, guideline, or practice regarding utility outages in city buildings, be sure to follow it. If there is no written procedure, check with your city's administration to determine whether or not there are expectations, and if so, what advice they have. Years ago, when flooding closed several water treatment facilities across the state, the Iowa Department of Public Health and the State Fire Marshal's Office and the Iowa Department of Public Safety were asked if libraries should close when they have no running water. Both authorities told us that as long as there is a sign on each public entrance of a library informing visitors that there is no running water, a library can stay open. Even when a library loses power, If natural light provides enough illumination that visitors and staff can safely navigate the building, a library can stay open during the day. For context, during the historic floods of July 1993, when the city of Des Moines was without electricity for 10 days and without water for 3 weeks, state employees were expected to report for work. We had to be near windows to see, dress codes were relaxed to accommodate the lack of air conditioning, and there were portable toilets in the parking lot, but we worked every single weekday. The public came and went as usual to conduct their government business. Your patrons can probably arrange their visits around bathroom breaks, but according to expert legal advice, your staff should be allowed time to use the nearest working public restroom, no matter where that is. Iowa's plumbing code in Iowa Administrative Code Title 641, Chapter 25, states in Rule 25.4 that in public libraries with an official capacity of fewer than 200 people, either one unisex bathroom or a bathroom for males and a bathroom for females is required. So the fourth intersection is keys to the library. Some library directors ask us who should have keys to the library. They tell us their mayors, council members, city clerks, and trustees all think they should have keys. Also, some libraries in small towns are in the habit of allowing groups to use the library's meeting rooms after hours, and the groups are given keys to let themselves in and out of the buildings. Directors ask if this practice is even legal. State law does not address these questions. Security procedures related to city building access are local matters, sometimes dictated by cities' insurers. Typically, city halls have keys to all city buildings, with public works directors and police chiefs having access to master keys. Other than that, library directors usually give a key to custodial staff who clean after hours. There is no legitimate reason for mayors, city council members, or even library trustees to be inside public libraries when they are not open, unless there is some sort of emergency for which they must be consulted. But even then, for any given emergency, law enforcement or the public works director would be the first on the scene and then call the library director to survey the situation. So no keys would be needed by elected or appointed officials. Furthermore, it is completely unacceptable for outside groups and ordinary citizens to have unsupervised access to the library for after-hours meetings. Other city agencies do not allow people to use their facilities after hours. High school kids can't play basketball at the recreation center after it's closed. Guys can't play poker in the waterworks offices on Saturday nights. Teens can't have parties at the high school when no one's there. Government offices are locked at closing, and people are allowed to enter only when accompanied by authorized staff. This is standard policy, procedure, and practice. The main reason not to allow people in the library when no staff are present is that the building is full of confidential information protected by law, specifically Iowa Code Section 22.7, subsection 13. It is the library directors and the board's legal responsibility to guarantee patrons the confidentiality that the law promises them. What's to keep someone from digging through the library's circulation desk, the reference desk, or even the director's desk? No one is allowed to lurk around the desks in City Hall. And likewise, no one should be allowed to lurk around other city employees' desks after hours either. The second reason not to allow anyone in the library after hours is that the building is full of taxpayer property that they fully expect city employees to secure and protect. Townspeople are not given a key and allowed access to the city's garage full of equipment, for instance. The city's mowers, weed whackers, salt spreaders, shovels, and trucks are locked up at night because taxpayers would loudly object if they thought these tools in which they invested weren't secured. The thousands of dollars of books, computers, and furniture in the library require the same protection. If the city's insurance company knew that people were routinely given keys to a particular city agency, the company would surely clarify that their policy assumes common sense security precautions are being taken, including adequately staffing city buildings when they're open and locking them once staff leave. An Iowa librarian reported to the state library that her library board quickly and unceremoniously ended their after-hours access because staff discovered that people attending evening meetings were letting in anyone who knocked on the door, because it was too uncomfortable to sit there while someone's face was pressed up against the window. So unauthorized visitors were using the library, returning and taking books and other materials and wandering around the building while the meeting attendees went about their business. Yikes.
Well, one more aspect of library buildings we'll talk about is wireless internet access. The statistics on this slide come from the State of America's Libraries report. This report was done in 2022, but the statistics are always from the previous year. So the stats themselves are from 2021. And by the way, the State of America's Libraries report is published every year by the American Library Association during National Library Week in April. In 2020 and again in 21, this ALA report focused on how libraries nationwide responded to the COVID crisis and still continued to provide really important city services. 93% of public libraries then already were or providing wireless access or were planning to provide it. Wi-Fi access after the building was closed to the public. 23% of libraries then nationwide provided Wi-Fi hotspots for checkout and home use. That was 2 years ago, so we know these numbers have certainly gone up, and wireless hotspots that libraries are purchasing and making available for checkout are becoming more and more a commonplace thing in libraries large and small. Mandy has a bit more about wireless access as it affects the library's building.
So our fifth intersection, as Bonnie said, is wireless access. The need and appreciation for Wi-Fi access after hours became very clear to communities of all sizes during the COVID crisis. Many public libraries extended their Wi-Fi service after hours then, and most have continued that practice today. Several libraries used Federal American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA grant money distributed through the state library to design welcoming outdoor patio spaces. They added tables, benches, awnings, lighting, and charging stations so that in fair weather, people can be comfortable using the library's Wi-Fi outside. However, complaints increased from city officials and residents about people loitering outside the library building at all hours. Some mayors and councils threatened to force libraries to turn off their internet service after hours. Library directors asked us, what are our legal obligations to our patrons and also to our neighbors? This question is not addressed in federal or state law, but if you have a typical Iowa library ordinance, your trustees arguably have more power and authority over the library's services and grounds than do the mayor and city council. If necessary, your city attorney, maybe the Iowa League of Cities General Counsel could weigh in on that assessment. On the local level, it's a matter of how such a service fits into the library's mission statement and the board's philosophy of what it means to provide library service to its residents. First of all, on what basis are the people using your Wi-Fi after hours being judged? Do your mayor and the members of your city council use their home Wi-Fi in the evenings after the library is closed? The obvious answer is yes. Well, people using the library's Wi-Fi are doing the same thing, except that for whatever reason, they don't have access to reliable Wi-Fi in their homes. The proposal to shut off the Wi-Fi is controversial, and many would think it's discriminatory as well, and contrary to the library's mission. If the library turns off the nighttime Wi-Fi, there may be a backlash. Citizens may show up at the next library board meeting to ask why the library can't easily provide access to a service that's needed by so many residents who also pay taxes, but just can't afford to sit in the comfort of their own homes and use the internet at night. And by the way, most residential internet bills hover around $70 a month. There have been unflattering stories in local newspapers about turning off Wi-Fi access after hours at libraries, which have turned into difficult public relations issues for both the libraries and their cities. On the other hand, we've heard from some city officials that they are proud of their libraries when they drive by them at night and see this same site, because it confirms their belief that libraries are far more of an essential city service than some like to think they are. This is city tax dollars at work for residents. Librarians should collect a few inspiring stories to share with elected officials and concerned citizens. Adults going back to school and working day jobs, but without the internet at home, and people using the library's Wi-Fi after long days working and caring for their families to search and apply for different or better jobs in the area. If the Wi-Fi were to be turned off at night, many people's lives would be negatively affected. The professional standard is to leave on the library's Wi-Fi 24/7, especially in small towns where the service may not be available anywhere else. City officials need to remember that there are people living in their cities and their counties who are paying to use the library and its Wi-Fi connection. You are doing your community a public service by providing 24/7 access to the internet. This makes the library an invaluable asset to the community.
Well, before I leave this slide, I will note that second bullet point that says, as Mandy suggested, collect those stories that are really meaningful and really heartwarming and inspiring stories to share with your boards and with your funders, with cities and counties about how important wireless access is to so many people. Collect those stories, those statistics, and as you see on the second bullet point, WHOFI can help with that. So we wanted to make sure that you are familiar with this service from the state library. If you've not yet had a chance to explore WHOFI or to have taken advantage of this service, we hope you will visit this page on our website to read more about it. Again, this is from the state library and it is provided entirely free to Iowa's public libraries. The WHOFI software provides wireless usage statistics by monitoring and tracking the number of devices tapping in to the library's wireless network. And in addition to these statistics, WHOFI also offers some really important and nice reports that the software generates, again, that our directors can easily access and share at library board meetings. Boards in turn can share those with city funders. Data from WHOFI allows our library directors to much more quickly complete questions on the Public Library Annual Survey. There are plenty of questions on that survey that are related to library technology, and a couple of those questions relate to wireless usage. So information from these WHOFI reports can really help convey the story, as Mandy said, of the library's impact on the community, the library as an essential service, and it can help your boards make data-driven decisions about your library's technology. So if your library isn't yet familiar with WHOFI, all the information is there on this webpage. Well, before we ask some of you for your library building success stories, I have one to share first. It's a COVID success story. In those early months of dealing with COVID, in the early months from March through July, August, September of 2020, I came away convinced, based on all of the conversations I had with our Northwest libraries, I came away convinced that the libraries that fared best, and by that I mean those libraries that had the easier time with making decisions about what to do in the building during COVID, were those libraries that had a strong communication and a strong coordination with their city partners, like city administrators and mayors and councils. And in this example, with the city attorney. In 2020, Helen Rigdon, the Sioux City Public Library Director, shared this quote with me. And I have used this so many times, even outside of the COVID discussions. I've used this quote because it's such a strong showing of coordinated involvement between the city and its library. Back then, the Sioux City City Attorney instructed all city buildings to ensure access to public restrooms once the city buildings reopened. Now, the quote goes on to say that all city services did not have to reopen on the same day at the same pace. Phased reopenings were encouraged, but once reopened to the public, even if normal service hours were curtailed, those city buildings must have accessible restrooms opened. So for me, a very nice library building success story during a very challenging time to be able to know and make decisions about how can people and how can staff really safely use the library building. All right, we want to ask a question of you and maybe you've already shared some success stories in the chat space. Sam, if some of that chat has been flying by and I haven't kept up with it, I wondered if there's any happy stories. We've kind of been hinting at "don't let this happen to you" stories, but we would love to hear some happy stories about successful collaborations between your library and your city, where your library's building needs were pretty easily met.
I did just flip that chat open so you can chat your stories into everyone. While those are coming in, would you guys like to field a couple of Wi-Fi related questions that were part of what was flying past that I noted?
we can try.
Sure. Hufi, that Bon, you might know the answer to this. On those reports, it does have a timestamp on there, so you could see exactly when it was being used, correct? So turn your Wi-Fi on for 24 hours, trial it for a couple of months, and see just how much after-hours use you're getting.
Yes, it is time-stamped, and it includes the number of devices that are tapping in to the wireless network.
And then I think, Mandy, there may be a library law FAQ on this. So if you let me know the title, I can hunt for it and put a link in the chat. But what if a 24-hour Wi-Fi is being used for purposes which result in DMCA, and I'm not totally sure what that acronym stands for, notices being sent to the library?
Yes, those are notices from your internet service provider that the connection is being used illegally, like copyright is being broken, something is being downloaded that should be downloaded by law. So if you just go to the Library Law FAQ and type in DMCA, it should come up. Yes, I do have an extensive Library Law FAQ on that.
Do you have any kind of recap or overview you can issue at this point? Or send them to the FAQ?
Well, okay, so your defense is that you have registered with the DMCA. So the ISP, the service provider, cannot cut off your service because of this. So most libraries, the DMCA wants them to put a splash page on their internet sign-in that says, you agree to follow copyright law. Things like that. And then they click accept and then they're let in. So that protects the library from any adverse litigation, things like that.
Very good.
And Mandy, if I remember this, isn't that asked of our library directors to sign a new agreement like that every so often? That kind of sort of rings a bell
every
for
3
me.
years, maybe.
That rings
I'm having
a bell
trouble
for
remembering
me.
exactly, but it's all in that FAQ.
Someone asked a question then, and maybe this is related. So if you have that sort of acknowledgement page, you wouldn't normally then probably have a password on your Wi-Fi. And so someone asked, is it okay for the Wi-Fi to have a password or not?
Well, that prevents a lot of people from using it. So you're probably not being the service to your community that you want to be. I think some libraries, Bonnie, you work with libraries more closely. Do they require a library card sometimes? You have to have a library card to, you put that in and then you're in, rather than a password, put in your library card. People can get library cards, pretty easily. So
Yeah, I
Yes.
do know that many libraries, in my experience, do have some kind of a security code required for their wireless network. And while the building is open, that's easily taken care of. If people would have to inquire of the library staff, what's your wireless password today? But after hours, you're exactly right. After hours, then that becomes very problematic if that's to be a service and part of the library's mission to provide. So that's just kind of a local decision, but I think putting up those splash pages and having a place where people check that they agree with terms and conditions, I think is a much better option.
Vaughn, do you want to cover some of these success stories, or shall I read them out here? I've
No,
flagged a few of them.
Yeah, please do read them
Okay.
out. If there
So
are happy ones, because
oh
this is
yes.
good,
Oh
because
good.
this is a topic where we can find some unhappiness from town to town. So
Well, you asked for the happy ones, and we have a very pliant
good.
crowd here
Oh,
tonight.
good. Very good.
Okay, so the first one, I don't know what city this is in, but the library building needed new windows. The city went through the whole process of getting the quote and getting them replaced. The bill came to the library, but the city had capital improvement money that was moved over to cover the bill. So there we go. A nice happy story for us.
That's a happy
Again,
ending. Mm-hmm.
I'm not totally sure about this one. In the middle of several revitalization projects here at the library, city adding a budget line for capital improvements within the next fiscal year just for the library, so we can better track incoming and outgoing funds. We've spent a lot of bequests we had saved and a lot of grant funds, and the city also during the midst of those renovations, it sounds like the city offered physical storage space for some items as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a
Here's
nice
this.
collaboration.
Yes, yep. Here in Ames, the city administration identified money to fund replacement of the front doors, which were automatic and needed to open and close. So nice big city collaboration there. All right, let's see. Next week. Ooh, good luck to this person. We are replacing the flooring in the whole library. After discussing back and forth about the importance of replacing flooring, especially since there was wear in quite a few places, the city, in conjunction with the board, decided to invest in carpet squares, where the library board uses library trust money that's left, and the city will pay 75% of the bill. So a nice collaboration there to end up with a nice final product, it sounds like. That's great. What have I missed here? Yay, very good. Yeah, those are some nice success stories, folks. Now,
Yes,
is the next
yes, they
slide
are.
horror stories, or
Oh
do we get to
no,
skip those this
no.
time?
I don't know. I don't want to ask for horror stories.
Oh, good.
No,
Those we
but
discuss over
over
at the
lunch and yes,
yes, over
over
lunch
cocktails.
sometime.
Yes, we discuss those over cocktails. I do want to mention this though while it's in my brain, and I'm sure that other cities do this, but I was really tickled to learn about it happening at Sac City, and I hope it's still happening. But some years ago in Sac City, the city manager brought together in an annual meeting all the city department heads for the purpose of sharing capital improvement needs in each city building and each city office. And so all the department heads were asked to bring a list of the major things that should something go wrong, we would be able to prioritize this list. And so the department heads were also asked, though, to come with a historical look at how old is the HVAC system? How old is the roof? When was the last time that the elevator had any made? Elevator repair is horrible expensive, as Sioux City Public Library has learned in their downtown building. That's horribly expensive. So in Sac City, to have the department heads meet once a year in this conversation, bringing forward a list of the major things about their building, a historical look at when something was last fixed or repaired or renovated. And then it allowed the city manager to be able to much more easily prioritize those capital improvement repairs. So I think that's another really good success story. If that's happening for you, then that's a very good collaboration. Well, we do have a few resources to point you to as we wrap up our discussion tonight. If you circle back to this topic at future board meetings, these are some very good resources for you to look at to help you answer questions about the library's building and to help you inform your decisions about your building. Everything from the Code of Iowa to our partners at the Iowa League of Cities to the Iowa Department of Management and the Iowa Building Code. This is another resource that I want to be sure to share with you. And I'm glad Sam is here because we credit Sam with the creation of this disaster preparedness toolkit. You will find this on the State Library's website. And tucked inside this toolkit is a template that Sam created in Word that you can download and customize to fit your situation. This toolkit joined our collection of toolkits on the State Library's website last fall of 2022. It came about as the result of our fall workshop that we call Learning Circuits. Our topic for Learning Circuits last year was disaster preparedness, and so that's where this came from. This is a look at that checklist that I referenced. It's a checklist, yes, but unlike the dopey ones that I create that pretty much just have a column for yes or no, this is much more helpful because this one allows space for you to write in the blanks. Fill in the blanks with whatever you know about your library's buildings and grounds and the people who can help you in case of a disaster. So you're gathering together all of this information about your building into a one-stop shop. Whether you keep it on paper in a binder or whether you send it to the cloud, this is a very useful thing for library boards to work with their directors. As you can see here, it will ask you for, well, things like, do you know who carries the city's insurance on city buildings? Maybe you should know who that insurance carrier is and have a contact information. Do you know who the city would want you to contact in case there were major plumbing repairs that had to happen at the library or major electrical issues that had to be repaired? Or maybe after a really bad storm, who does the city want you to use for tree removal in case trees have fallen on the library's property? So pull this all together. You don't have to do it all in one sit down. You can do it over time, but I think you'll find that this is a very useful and practical document to work on.
In the course of putting this out, I did hear a great success story on this one, which was that the library director gets a panicked email one morning from someone in the city. Emergency department head meeting. Get together, everyone come. We've got to get a disaster plan put together for the city. Something had happened, something had been a spark, and the city realized they didn't have a comprehensive plan. So the library director grabs his binder, which he had put together as part of the learning circuit, and comes to this meeting and plops it down on the table and said, well, the library is ready to go. And the whole city ended up kind of copying his plan because so much of these resources, like the table you see here and other things, are going to be helpful for much more than just the library. So I loved being part of that. That was a great success story.
That is a great story to hear. Yes, that's very gratifying. Well, we have a couple of other resources that we know you would enjoy if you are subscribed to either of these. On the left, you see a copy of the Monday Morning Eye Opener. That's a weekly publication from the State Library. If your board members are receiving it, yay. If you're not yet, pass along that request that you would love to receive the eye opener to your own email inbox. Pass that along, if you would, to your library director, and then those directors can get in touch with me. There's a way to self-subscribe to the eye opener. There's a link on our website, but it's kind of clunky to self-subscribe to it. It takes you into Iowa government publications, and it's kind of convoluted, but I'm happy to subscribe people. It doesn't take me very long to do that. And then on the right, you see another great publication from our partners at the Iowa League of Cities, and that is the monthly Cityscape magazine. It could be that your city government's already receiving this, but I do believe this is freely available to anyone who would want to subscribe to it. And it comes again in email as a PDF document. We have a few minutes left, so what we'd love to hear from you, based on tonight's discussions, tell us what you think would be most beneficial for your library to pursue. Would it be just maybe strengthening communications between the library and City Hall? And sometimes the reason those communications can falter is when new people come into the jobs. New directors, new board members, new council members are elected, and mayors are elected. And sometimes it takes a while to regain that footing. If there was a really good communication before, we have new players now. We have to figure it out amongst new players. So it could be communication. It could be reviewing the disaster preparedness toolkit that we showed. It could be just asking those questions we talked about in terms of capital improvements. Is there a capital improvement plan in the city, and does it involve the library? Is there a capital improvement budget, and where is that money parked? That's a really great question to figure out. Maybe you want to address or revisit how many outstanding keys to the building might be out there in your town, yeah? So I'll pause and wait for some of those comments to come through.
We've had a few come through already, including the library and city capital improvement, strengthening communications, reviewing the disaster preparedness toolkit. That always makes me happy. Here's a nice communication related question, Bon, if you want to take it. With city communication, are city employees sometimes supposed to attend library board meetings, or trustees attend city council meetings? What's your best practice recommendation on that?
Well, I don't know about staff, how common that's done to attend city council meetings, but I love it when library board members go to council meetings on occasion, and directors as well. And I love for that to happen at times other than budget time. I think it's great to just go and be there in the audience and be a presence. I think that really shows the library's interest in the things that our city councils and mayors are taking up. Other agenda items, other city business on their agenda other than library business. So I love it when that happens. And I also love it when our city officials will join library board meetings on occasion as well. I think the reverse is also true, that city officials need to show that same level of interest in their city library as a city service. And a great way to do that is just to spend some time on occasion at a library board meeting.
We had a comment come through from a library director to the host, which says, I attend almost all city council meetings, and we have a council liaison who attends our board meetings. And so often if a city council has a has a liaison program set up to other departments. That's a great way to get them involved.
That's a great idea. I love to hear that happening. I love to hear that practice about having a city liaison to the library board. That's a great idea.
Yes. There is one more question that I wanted to highlight, or comment that came through the host and panelists, but it says libraries can be independent but need to be respectful of other city department heads. Good communication skills help break down barriers between city and library. And I thought that was a nice sort of wrap-up statement to what you were just talking about. I'm not asking you to give up the figurative keys to the kingdom. We've talked about literal keys a bit tonight, but you are an independent, in most cases, an independent governing board. You function a little differently than some other city departments, but that doesn't mean you're totally on an island. So I thought that was nice.
Yes, I do like that. Thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of more sort of specific questions that we did not get to tonight as I'm scrolling through the chat. And so I apologize if you sent one of those in and we missed you. But I would invite you, Bonnie, do you have a slide with contact information here? I know we're getting close to the top of the hour and we'll need to be wrapping up sort of soon. And reach out to any of us at the state library, your district consultant, or Mandy, if there are questions that we did not address that you put into chat tonight. So
yes, for sure. Thank you, Sam. You know, I'm not saying I'll do this in October, that I'll take away my cute little, cars moving through an intersection graphic to make way for our names and our emails and our phone numbers. I'm not saying I'm going to do that for October because this is so cool.
I do love your little, that's a great find. What I'll do.
It was a great find, but you all know that you can reach out to us. If you come to the State Library's website, you will see a link that says contact us, and the us includes myself and Sam and Mandy and everyone else on the State Library staff. So feel free to reach out to us.
I'm just putting the link into the chat, but yeah, you'll easily find us on the State Library website for sure.
Yes.
Let me make a quick note here at the end and just remind folks that as we ran registration through Zoom in order to be more accommodating to our city colleagues who don't need Iowa Learns accounts, our CE evaluation to the librarians and board members in the room will look a little different. So watch for an email from Zoom, which includes a link to the evaluation, and you'll want to click that. And the lights just turned off in the Miller building here on me, so it must be time to head home.
Talk about a building issue.
Well, I think they're on a timer actually, so we're saving dollars by turning lights off, which is fine.
She gets to exit the Miller building in the dark now. That's fun.
It is. But we're very, very thankful to have such a nice crowd tonight. Do give us your feedback on that evaluation, and librarians, that will be your opportunity for CE credit as well.
And we hope you'll come back in October, October 26th. We hope you'll join us again for part 2 of Intersections, which talks about city budgets and library budgets.
Absolutely. I know we're trying to wrap up, but there's such a beautiful story that came through in chat from a board member in Davenport that I just want to share. And of course, Davenport recently impacted by the building collapse, which was very near to the main branch of the Davenport Library. And the mayor was able to get in touch with this board president, who was able to get in touch with library staff to open up the facility to be a location for first responders who were working through the rubble on the building collapse. And so that's a great city library collaboration right there, that they knew that they had a good enough relationship and a good enough working situation that they could be in touch and make that happen. So thank you for sharing that success story from Davenport as well. And now our official goodbye. I apologize. We had such a nice wrap up and then I backtracked us. But Mandy, thank you. I'm sorry for the difficulties with the link. Always thankful to have your input. Thank you everyone for coming. And if you're watching the recording, we hope you enjoyed it. Please join us again in October.